Hello, everyone. This is the professor, the only professor in America who will be known to his audience instantly without any more elaboration than that. Yes, Aloevera is my game, and words are my name. Tonight will be the first number of a new show under the Aloevera masthead. It is an interview show, and we are calling the show simply The Interview, because it will be the most important interview of the week every week. The one interview without which all the other interviews don't matter. And for the first interview of the new show, I knew in my heart as soon as I thought about it that there could not be a more important interviewee for this first edition than Ben Simple. The number one, number two man in the country, friends, because the Church of Golly is simply the most important organization outside the government anyway, that has been born and raised in this country of ours, perhaps ever. Welcome to the new show, Ben. Hello, Aloe. That was quite an intro, and I was proud to be part of it. Ben, you just heard my best attempt at introducing you. I'd like to hear how you would introduce yourself. Well, Professor, I'm Ben Simple, just as I always have been. You know, if you know me, and I know a lot of you know me because of me knowing oval rubber. And most of you who know me because I came to know Golly the prophet, thanks to Oval's knowledge of Gall and the great man, and so on. Now, as far as we know, Oval Rubber, who was a mere recent graduate from a small, little-known post-grad seminary for the religiously afflicted, which, to make things worse, was located deep in the land of Salt Lake, where the dominant culture had a strong hold on everything. Oval Rubber, who went to the seminary not to fulfill his vocation as a preacher of a particular faith, but rather went there with nothing in mind whatsoever, came out of that experience being the one and only known exponent of a colleague of Jesus, known apparently as Golly, or at the beginning, simply Gall of Nazareth, a friend of the Christian martyr who himself was so unknown that he got away scot-free and unknown. So when I say that you know me because I knew Oval when he was starting his Church of Golly, I'm saying that you know me because of a totally unknown person whose name today is widely known, namely Golly of Nazareth. Incredible. And you've been with Oval pretty much continuously since the beginning, yes? That's about the size of it, Prof. I was not lucky enough to be on the road trip from Salt Lake to Kansas when so much happened that set the tone for the whole thing from then on until today. I would give anything if I could somehow go back and get on board that VW bus, Ralph. Did you call me Ralph? What, Professor? It sounded like you called me. Well, never mind. My mistake. Oh, no. Oval's VW bus was named Ralph. Anyway, that group of folks, starting with Oval and his lovely wife, Effie, then their lovely hitchhiker, Galvin, and soon after that, those two lovely Bay Area freaks, John and Bev, in their own bus. But I hitched my wagon to Oval's car, or rather star, within a couple of days of their landing in Houston, Kansas, and I was literally drawn into the whole thing, like a moth is drawn into a flame. Wow, that sounds dangerous. There was definitely an element of danger in it, that's true. Well, Professor, it was like this. Oval and Ethel Rubber and young Galvin and John and Bev, well, Houston, Kansas in 1976 was not known as a hotbed of hippie activity, and those folks at that time were definitely hippies in the eyes of the citizens of Ford County. I mean, they looked for all the world just what these people around here thought of as West Coast hippies, with their two VW buses and the way they dressed and the long hair. And then they went and rented one of the nicer East Side old houses and all commenced living there together. My, oh my. I don't think they realized what a stir they caused here. And much as I enjoy hearing the stories of those old times, I really want to know what is going on your side of the Golly Corral these days. What has Ben Simple up to lately? Okay, Professor, I'm going to tell you. I've been doing what my granny used to call speculating. You know, Prof, I've been employed with Church of Golly for almost 50 years, and I have very little employment insecurity. Still, I have this kind of imagination. What if Oval Rubber had never become interested in Golly of Nazareth? Would there be any organization doing that today? Would the Church of Golly or anything like it exist? Would anybody else in all these hundreds of years have come across the clues that Oval came across that set this whole thing in motion? And what is your answer, Mr. Simple? Sounds a little terrifying to contemplate. Now, I've always taken the attitude that there's no use in being afraid of what has not happened. But when I start adding up the facts of the case, it seems rather doubtful. Oh, doubtful. That seems to be a perfect response for you, Ben. Yeah, let's build the case the way I have done. This is by no means a complete prosecution, as it were, but only where I have gotten to in my casual daydreaming. Oval has said that he found mention of someone named Golly in a footnote at the end of a chapter of an obscure book about minor religious cults known to have existed around the time of Jesus. He's also said that he has never found anything else mentioning this cult in his studies of religious history. Yet, we also have it from Ethel that he spent his 2 years at the seminary in Utah developing a theoretical basis supporting this footnote, using his study of other cults of that time, for instance, the numerous Gnostic sects that are well documented, as well as certain passages from the New Testament which mention other groups which had formed in the years during and after the time of Jesus. Would it not be reasonable to think that someone else would also have made these connections? I admit, Ben, that I have not made a study of such things. That's okay, Professor. You specialize in other topics in your career. But taking the question from another angle, while there are plenty of local churches of Gaullism around the country and even overseas, and each of these is run by a leader, which are usually referred to as ministers, and some of these ministers have strong opinions about certain points made by Oval and me. Yet there are no actual other organizations that could be called a Reformed Gaullist or anything like that, such as you'll find associated with other denominations. Yes, yes, I am following you, Ben. But most surprising of all, Professor, is the fact that even though certain broadcasting evangelist preachers have been known to lash out at the COG as being of the devil or similar charges, yet we have developed a remarkably civil relationship with the mainstream churches. None of them has gone out of their way to challenge the teachings of our organization. This sounds on the surface like an endorsement of Gaullism as a teaching, but it is not really so. It is more like an effort to maintain collegiality among religions, letting major differences among them be ignored for the sake of common defense against anti-religious forces in general. And do you draw any conclusions from these points you have made, Ben? Well, granted that I have not approached the topic in a scholarly way, with footnotes of my own and so on, but my conclusion is, for what it is worth, that it seems unlikely that there would be a widespread acquaintance with Golly, but for the work of old Rubber and the people who work in support of his ministry. Does this cause you any anxiety? Well, Professor, a healthy doubt is always encouraged in our way of life. I have brought up this subject with Oval, much as I have done with you. And Oval's response? He looked at me and smiled, that ironic kind of smile for which he is famous, and said nothing. This seems like a perfect place to close our interview for now, Ben. I'm sure we'll want to bring you back for more another time. Well, thanks for having me, Professor Aloevera. It has been a thrill and an honor for me to be your first guest. I wish you well in your new program. And that's it. The first interview on the interview with Professor Aloevera. Tune in next week for another important guest. Good night. Good day. Good golly.